Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, recapping the first day in the tampering window of NFL free agency, the Eagles made a big splash on defense. Our takeaways next.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's edition of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts. And Gino Camilleri, my co-host, I'm Lou DiBiase. If you are going to host, or I should say bet, on one of the Eagles' first and biggest free agent moves, what they did today would have maybe been top three, or at least based on our preferences of what we wanted to do, our takeaways today on the show, because the Eagles made a big move in free agency, bringing in linebacker / defensive end. He called himself a weapon now in his Twitter bio. He's a Philadelphia Eagles weapon. It is Hasson Reddick. The Eagles signed him to a 3-year contract, upwards of $45 million in this deal, $30 million of which guaranteed. And Gino, we were waiting for the big splash move. They kind of tipped their hand with the Russell Wilson stuff and, Calvin Ridley. They tipped their hand of being aggressive, and they, to me, nailed it. Outside of Marcus Williams, Hasson Reddick was the guy I think I wanted the most. And it was a much-needed move on the edge.
I'll tell you what, Lou, there's nothing more powerful than the Camilleri jinx. Literally, maybe 40 minutes before that, I said the Eagles are never really involved in that first wave of free agency.
I saw
where
that,
the guys get big contracts. But hello, Hasson Reddick.
Well, you weren't wrong, Gino.
No.
They normally, because what they've been gunning for in free agency, they've been role players, not really like main parts of the core, and it's been, receivers, other positions. But this was different. They needed a big part of their core to be on the edge, a pass rusher that's young. And so when you have a need like that, you don't skimp in that area. Like when it comes to edge rushers, the defensive line, the Eagles do not skimp in that area. So while you're right, that's normally their free agent philosophy, this was a move they needed to make, and I think the fit is perfect.
Without a doubt. And I look around at the other edge players that got paid, right? Emmanuel Ogba. You can look at what he got from Miami. $15 million a year for a guy as versatile as Hasson Reddick. In this market, Lou, he's making $6 million less a year AAV than Christian Kirk?
He's 27, smack dab in the middle of his prime.
Wide receivers are getting crazy money, but the edge rushers, I believe, are going underpaid right now. I think they need to get more money, and the Eagles struck quick.
Probably
and got their
draft class, maybe the depth.
I don't know.
Everybody knows they can get edge in the draft, maybe. But yeah, man, I mean, Reddick on that deal, and he proved last year, 23 and a half sacks the last 2 years. Some people thought in 2020 it was a flash in the pan with Arizona, but last year he surpasses 10 again on the season. And so I don't think this was a fluke player. I think he is a legitimate, and he was a first-round talent. So it's not like this was some out-of-nowhere player that suddenly hit this crazy, unpredictable ceiling.
Without a doubt, he's top 5 in sacks the last 2 seasons. And I know sack numbers don't speak to true pressure, but I think it was Brandon Staley that said the great quote that sacks come as a result of continued pressure. The Eagles being 31st in sacks last year, the pressures weren't there, but they needed a guy like that opposite Josh Sweat. I tweeted out their depth chart, Lou, of the edge position. I don't think this takes them out of the running to draft a guy in round 1 either. And now you're going to be 6 deep at the edge position, plus Javon Hargrave, plus Milton Williams, plus Fletcher Cox on the inside. This is going to be a fun unit to watch up front. And just to see where they line up Hasson Reddick, I think that weapon tag on him really is a good way to look at what he does, because he does a lot of things. You and I talked after the signing, and you were saying, does he drop into coverage? And I said, yeah, he's going to be a guy that'll probably cover those flat and curl zone areas, not a guy that's really in man-to-man, but somebody in that Sam Backer role that Jannard Avery didn't really fit to a T. This is what Hasson Reddick does. He runs that Sam position. And to see his contribution in the pass rush, You have two guys in him and Josh Sweat on the other side that have unbelievably quick first steps. And the Eagles' defensive line, their game is take a gap and a half and get after the quarterback. This is that move, man. And Howie Roseman said, and all the reports said that they were going to be players in this edge market, even outside of the draft. Well, they were right, man. How he talked, we got to listen to him now, because what he has said, he's kind of gone along with the game plan. I'm just waiting for that veteran wide receiver that they've been talking about, and possibly a safety addition as well. But defensive end is where the core of this team starts. They start in the trenches.
Yeah.
I'm not shocked that this is the first position that they invest heavily in.
And for the first time in a long time, they needed help there. And, Gino, I remember being at that game in Carolina when Reddick had 3 sacks on Jalen Hurts. And I remember watching him and Brian Burns, and they wrecked that offensive line. Remember, Jordan Mailata had to play right tackle that day, and Reddick was going after him. And I was kind of getting jealous of that duo, and Reddick and Josh Sweat is kind of similar vibes for sure. This was a player they needed really badly. A speed, whatever you want to define him, a linebacker, an edge, he's going to do it all. He's going to wear many different hats on this defense. He's just a machine with sacks. He's somebody that finishes. And although the Eagles, pressure numbers throughout the years have normally been good, this is one thing they really didn't have, like a hunter, a closer, someone that, there's been too many times where the Eagles get there, but a mobile quarterback finds a way to get away. I keep thinking 2018's in my head with Cam Newton and Marcus Mariota on those 4th and longs, and they just couldn't finish. They couldn't close in on time and, finish the play. And last year, they're 30th in sacks. And Reddick defines, he is what they've been missing for so long, just a game breaker. And this was a great stat from our good friend Jeff Kerr of CBS to show how productive Reddick has been the last 2 years. Only Aaron Donald and Haason Reddick the last 2 years have 100+ tackles, over 20 sacks, and 8 forced fumbles. So again, you're right. The Eagles have normally had this controlled aggression approach in free agency, like they're players, but it's normally for tier 2, tier 3, because most of the time their core in the trenches and quarterback's been locked up. But when you need a primary role like this, you're going to spend. And that doesn't mean overpay for a 30-year-old, but when there's a 27-year-old like Reddick, back-to-back years producing like he has on the open market, and like you said, it's kind of a bargain, you splash for sure.
I keep going back to that 2015 offseason, right, where they add Rodney McLeod, they add Brandon Brooks.
Yeah.
This is kind of that Brandon Brooks move on the other side, right? Like, not the best edge rusher out there. There's Chandler Jones still, obviously, and Khalil Mack was dealt, but a guy who's in the prime of his career, coming off 2 of the better seasons. I don't think they're paying him for what he did in the last 2 years. I believe that they really have a role for him in Jonathan Gannon's defense that they did not have last season. Somebody that, like you said, can close on the quarterback, can close on those running backs on the wide areas. They're going to get a top-end linebacker, in my opinion, in the draft if they get one day 1 or day 2. Now they're going to reap the rewards of what those edge guys up front can do. And I look at who benefits from this move the most, Lou. I believe Josh Sweat benefits from it. I believe Brandon Graham benefits from it. Why? Because Josh really was the primary pass rusher last year. Derek Barnett, you kind of knew what he was. Now you get the guy that was drafted 1 pick ahead of him, who potentially could have been the 14th selection. Brandon Graham drops down to your 3rd edge rusher. He's going to be in that Chris Long role, which we talked about. And now that rotation that won us a Super Bowl, to an extent, is back. And I think this is probably one of the better edge groups that we have seen in Philadelphia in terms of pure explosiveness. We know what Brandon Graham is. We know what Derek Barnett is. They're both motor guys. Now you have 2 guys on the edge that are pure speed to power rushers that have an explosive first step. And when you go into this division where Lyle Collins is going to be traded or cut by the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington football team, now Commanders, just lost their best offensive lineman in Brandon Sheriff today to Jacksonville. And who knows what's going on in New York? You draft and you sign to beat your division, Lou. I think they made an improvement and might be arguably talent-wise the direction that Dallas is going, potentially losing LVE and Tank Lawrence and Randy Gregory. The Eagles are getting better and getting ready for that run with this quarterback on a rookie contract. And it's a great first step. Because,
I agree.
One, it tells me Howie is willing to take the risk, right, Lou? It's not always going to pay off a high-profile free agent, and they haven't done that in maybe 6 years. Now they're taking another swing, bringing a kid who played in Lincoln Financial Field in college, understands
that's the cool part too. It's a local thing. You know, Hasson Reddick playing at Temple. I remember being at the draft in 2017 in Philadelphia when he got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, and it was like the Eagles were on the clock and they made a move. Like the city of Philadelphia knew about Hasson Reddick very well, and they were cheering for him when he got picked live at the draft in Philly. So that's a cool part of the story, and it's such a perfect fit. And, you mentioned that, again, the Eagles have been really good with the pass rush over the years. Like they've always been good, but outside of 2021, but they really haven't had that combo you talked about, the speed and the athleticism, the ceiling type of player with all the physical traits. Normally it's been, like you said, motor guys, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett. It's been, veterans that they've brought in that can play inside and out, but it hasn't really been that athlete, right? Chris Long, Michael Bennett, they wanted interior pressure with Javon Hargrave and Malik Jackson, Timmy Jernigan. So I like the direction they're taking for sure. And in the modern day NFL, man, I mean, you got to catch these quarterbacks, and to have somebody like Hasson Reddick is extremely important. I want to talk with you next, though, about that position, where he fits in this defense. I think a lot of people are asking questions. Is he a traditional defensive end? Is he a stand-up linebacker? What is his role with Jonathan Gannon's defense next year? So that's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Built Bar, just as sweet as the Hasson Reddick signing, probably more. And because the best part of these bars, they're covered in 100% chocolate. They taste just like a candy bar, but it's all of the flavor and none of the guilt, because there's only 130 calories in every bar, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Right now, we have amazing flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, they have white chocolate, cookies, and cream as well. Again, all of the health benefits and none of the guilt. Compared that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories and 30 grams of sugar, Built Bar, 130. So that's a lot lower. And they also have some brand new puff bars as well. These are the first ever protein infused marshmallow bars. You've got flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream. So good. They're going to be your new favorite. Make sure you check them out at built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. It's LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order of Built Bars. Again, it's built.com. Promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Monday edition of the show, recapping day one of the NFL free agency period. It officially begins on Wednesday, but Gino, it was a minute in. The tampering window opened at noon, and at 12:01, a deal was already announced. So teams are tampering even before the tampering window opens. And the Eagles made a move themselves, and they even tweeted it out, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know if they did that by accident, but they did tweet out the move that they intend to sign a deal with Hasson Reddick. And, we talked about how regardless of the position he plays on this defense, they just needed what he does best, and that's get to the quarterback and get him down on the ground, right? 23.5 sacks over the last 2 years. Gino, he's had double-digit sacks the last 2 years. The last time an Eagles pass rusher did that, Trent Cole, a decade ago, 2010 and 2011. So it's been a long time. But I do want to ask you, because some people are asking, is he an edge rusher? Is he that Sam linebacker? Is he going to be dropping back in coverage a lot? What is his role? And my answer is kind of everything, right? I think he's going to be an upgrade from Jannard Avery at that Sam spot. But in nickel at times, he's going to be your other edge rusher next to opposite Josh Sweat. I don't really think it's a black and white answer.
No, it definitely is not. And going back to what he had said about his position in his Twitter bio, it's a weapon. That's what he is. I look at Green Bay and what they did with Zadarius Smith before they had cut him today. Really a guy that probed that defensive line. I think they're going to line Haason Reddick up in multiple different gaps. He'll put his hand in the dirt on the edge. He'll be in a 2-point stance, rushing the passer as well. He'll drop into coverage, not man on man, more zone style concepts where he'll just spot drop if a tight end.
You don't want him on a running back on a
No.
seam route down the left side.
No, that won't happen. They'll use a more traditional linebacker / safety role for that. But he is somebody that is athletic enough to get to those areas where Jannard Avery might have been more limited, which he definitely was. He has more explosiveness than a guy like Jannard. He has more versatility, in my opinion. And he's going to be a player that when you see his name on the depth chart, I would see him in multiple different positions. Like, I don't think he's going to be a zero tech lining up over a nose guard like Fletcher Cox, but I think you'll see him in those mugged linebacker looks because Jonathan Gannon comes from that Mike Zimmer style of defense, right? Where they like to put linebackers in between those two gaps to frustrate an offensive line and really go to this odd style front, which you don't know is odd or even because they have 5 guys up, they have 6 guys up, 4 dropping, or 4 are going to rush the passer, 2 of them are going to drop into coverage, maybe all 6 of them go down and rush the passer. He brings that versatility where you're saying, okay, we got Josh on one side, we got Fletcher Cox, Siobhan Hargrave, and then potentially Milton Williams and Josh Sweat as your 5 guys that you could have out there at any time. Who's going to go after the passer and who's going to spot drop? They have that versatility now with Haason Reddick, which if they do add another edge rusher in this class, I feel would be more to that role because they do still have Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat to man that true edge position, but they want athletes up front now, Lou. We talk about what Howie Roseman said back in 2020. Can these guys run? You got to have edge rushers that can run. Not to chase guys down the field to protect the seam, but to get in the backfield. And I look at the game that Haason Reddick really torched the Eagles last year against Carolina. Look at how explosive he was chasing down Jalen Hurts in big moments too.
Well, that's what he's space, Gino. Like I noticed, I was watching some of his highlights from his Cardinals year in 2020, and he's blowing up screen passes on the far, right hash. And, he is an athlete. You're not going to want him again lined up in nickel on 3rd and 13, manned up with a tight end or running back for sure. Like it's not always going to be there's 4 defensive linemen and Haason Reddick out there in certain situations. In those kind of spots, he'll probably be the premier defensive end edge rusher. He's not going to always have his hands in the dirt, but he makes your defense more multiple, and it's good because you're going to have more looks this year. You're not going to be hopefully as vanilla as Jonathan Gannon's defense was a lot of the time last year. And hopefully that was just because of personnel. And with Reddick, there's not going to be really as many excuses to not be multiple. So, and what I like about it too, as you mentioned, like, you can still draft an edge rusher in the first round. You can still, linebacker is not off the table now. If you want to draft a Devin Lloyd or a Nakobe Dean, but what Reddick does though, he just, again, keeps that optionality open, right? I think he makes it a lot easier where you don't go into the draft feeling pressure like, oh my God, we have to move one of these first round picks to trade up for a David Ojabo if nobody falls, because we don't have another edge rusher opposite Josh Sweat, right? So you don't feel that kind of pressure. And even in that Sam linebacker role, he's going to fill some spots at that position as well in space. So I think it just kind of takes the pressure off you in knowing that it's not a Band-Aid move either. Because like you said, I mean, he's a 27-year-old that is getting better and better each year. And he's a former first-round talent.
And I think what will really benefit this team is allowing Josh Sweat to play on the strong side of formations where he can be that run stuffer, but also uses athleticism, where on the backside, Haason will probably be that off-ball linebacker at times where he just has to track down the offensive line, go behind it, use that wave technique, shuffle his feet, and tackle the running back. He's going to be blowing up plays, and they need a guy like that. Imagine him standing up with Davian Taylor on the other side, crashing downhill to stop the run. I think that's really who else is going to benefit from this is Davion, who can now flow with the play and just clean up the mess of what they have.
Which I think fits him better.
Yeah, you're going to have – he is not a guy that's like, okay, he's going to anticipate it. He's a flow, react, and come downhill type of player. And when you have guys that can hold their gap, the linebackers can really excel from then on. And I think Haason Reddick is the perfect culture fit for Philadelphia as well. He's walked the streets of Philadelphia. He went to Temple, like we had said. He knows what it's going to take to play in this environment, and I think he's up for the task, Lou. That's one of those guys that I always go back to how we let him get away. Like, he was right there at 13. He would have been probably the better option and the better pick than DB at the time because of the ceiling. He's still got a ceiling to him, man. We don't know what he's going to do in this Gannon scheme. He was in Carolina. He was in Arizona. Now he's going to be in a system for multiple seasons. I think year one, it might be a 6 to 7 game progression, getting him in the swing of it, gets hot towards the back half. But then year two in this defense, I mean, I could see him getting double-digit sacks again for the next 2 years, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would be nice. Again, that hasn't happened in a decade for the Eagles, and it could be on the horizon with Haason Reddick. And again, man, that last year, we wanted Brian Burns too so bad in 2019. Me and you've been dying for this kind of edge rusher, and we got it with Josh Sweat. But to have two of them now and to have somebody as productive as Reddick is extremely exciting to have that tandem. Because, again, while the Eagles have not really needed a whole lot of help on the defensive line over the years, they haven't had this kind of player. And it's an exciting player to have on your defense. And, because you watch the playoffs and you see teams like the Rams and you see these teams with these young, explosive edge rushers. Like, I want that. Like, that looks like, even Tampa Bay, we saw in the playoff game, the way their athletes on defense could fly to the football. That's what Reddick is for the Eagles. And it's been a long time since they've had that kind of player. Gino, we'll get into what is next in free agency for the Eagles. Their first move was a big one. They spent a good amount of money today. So what's on the horizon? A lot of receivers getting big contracts today. Are they going to stay away from that market? Is a safety still to come? We'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
Well, there is the possibility that if you want to bet on the chance that the Eagles do land a wide receiver, you can bet them. Allen Robinson, I think right now is plus 800 to land with the Eagles. Juju Smith-Schuster is plus 900. And where do I get those lines? BetOnline.net, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Eagles and Locked On Podcast Network. They're sponsoring us all. We're shouting them out all the time because it's the best sportsbook there is. You can go and bet draft props. You could bet futures and free agency. I mean, Lou, I've never gone onto a sportsbook and been able to guess who's the Eagles' next wide receiver signing. It's amazing. To you and I, guys that love this time of year, you really put your info in it. Go to Bet Online and bet those lines. Win yourself some money. It's the easiest and fastest way. The official sports book. We're never going to send you anywhere else. And like I said, if Calvin Ridley used BetOnline.net, he probably still would have been playing next year and most likely would have been an Eagle. Bet Online, where the game starts.
All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles, recapping day one of the tampering period in NFL free agency. The Eagles sign a top-tier, I think, production-wise, edge rusher in Haason Reddick to a 3-year contract worth upwards of $45 million, 30 of which is guaranteed. So, Gino, we got into that. And now let's dive into what is to come, because this was only day one. The Eagles also did make another move on defense today, deciding not to tender linebacker Alex Singleton, which I'm fine with. I want to upgrade at that spot anyway and not really need Singleton anymore. He filled a role for the last 2 years when you needed him, but definitely want to upgrade at that position. And with Davian Taylor and TJ Edwards, the steps they took, you don't really need Singleton as much anymore. So, maybe stand-up linebacker, the Mike or Will spot is something they still pursue in free agency. Devondre Campbell, a guy they were keeping a close eye on, did re-sign in Green Bay, signed a 5-year deal worth $50 million. So he got a nice contract in Green Bay. I don't know, maybe a tier 2 safety now. I think with the Reddick move, I don't know. I mean, is Marcus Williams off the board? Maybe not, but I still think a Justin Reed type of move is on the horizon more. And then receiver, I mean, Christian Kirk's getting paid. At first everybody thought it was 21 million average per year. The details an hour ago came out. It's closer to 17, but still, for a guy that's had one season over 900 yards, and then Jacksonville turns around and pays Zay Jones $30 million over 3 years. I don't know, Gino, at this point, I'm not paying Juju or DJ Chark that money. I prefer to just take Chris Olave in the first round if this is the kind of market they're commanding. I thought when Gallup got that $12.5 million deal yesterday per year, I didn't think this kind of market was going to be set, but that was the case.
The wide receiver market is one that I really cannot figure out because I look at the Dolphins. They get Cedric Wilson for 3 years and $24 million. I think that's the best value signing on the day, in my opinion. He came in and played that third wide receiver role really well when Michael Gallup was out in Dallas. Now Michael Gallup goes back there. Cedric Wilson goes to Miami. I thought that might have been like a deal setter, but no, Christian Kirk came in like an hour before that and blew up the whole thing. But earlier in the day, Eric Gelko, he's a scouting here for the East-West Shrine Bowl. He always does this before the draft and free agency. He'll do like 15 minutes before the draft is about to start and 15 minutes before free agency. And today he said that the number to look at for Juju was only $9 million. I don't know how realistic that is now with the market.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Lou, if you're willing to shell out 17 for Christian Kirk, what does Allen Robinson get now? Like 24?
But that's the thing. I can't imagine that Kirk resets the market. I think most teams are going to say that's an outlier, and we're not going to use that now as a parameter for right. I mean, but Allen Robinson is a case because he is proven a lot more than Christian Kirk. I don't know, Gino, maybe the Eagles try to trade for Laviska Shenault now. I mean, the Jaguars have Marvin Jones. They have Zay Jones now. They have Christian Kirk on these contracts. They paid Evan Ingram today as well. Doug Peterson in Jacksonville was busy. Maybe Doug wants Jalen Reagor too. Give him Reagor and we'll take Laviska and have him fit in. I wanted him more than Reagor anyway that year. And maybe he's one of your value signings or a trade at wide receiver. But if this is the contracts that receivers are going to get, I'm good. It's not like the Eagles desperately need a wide receiver one. They need help, but not this much. I'm not paying Christian Kirk close to that money.
No, and I think the safety market kind of is set really where it should have been. Like
Quandre Diggs got a nice deal today.
You got like 14.3 a year, which I think is right where those top safeties should get. Detroit had re-signed their safety as well. I can't remember his name for around
Tariq Wilson, I think.
Yes, yeah. And Tracy Wilson.
Something,
I think
something
so.
Like that.
I can't remember his name, but
it's
Tracy Walker is actually his name.
Walker.
Yes, we got it.
We got it. Lion safeties.
But I look at both of those markets now, and I'm saying like, oh, Marcus Williams probably should have been off the board at this point. Same with like Justin Reed. Maybe that market kind of will reset itself a little bit tomorrow, and reality will come crashing back down because I can't see the market playing out the way it is. Teams don't have that money. Teams don't have Jacksonville Jaguar money where they can give the Matthew Dellavedova 14 contract that he got.
Every 2016 NBA contract.
2016
was getting an NBA max deal.
No, and the Eagles aren't in that market either. And even at the edge position, they didn't overpay for Hasson Reddick, in my opinion.
It doesn't take them off the board.
$15 million, Lou, for a premier edge rusher who's fifth in sacks in the last 2 years in the market up against the guys that he's with. I mean, those are $22, $24 million players all year long. So I think the Eagles are in a good position where they kind of have a little bit more need at safety. Maybe they continue to take that Brooks McLeod route and they got to find that second big signing. I think that's the case. And then let tier 2 and tier 3 kind of play its way through, but safety over wide receiver, I'm taking safety and giving that position money any day.
If you're going to invest another nice contract here, we agreed on this last week. It's still going to be in safety because I still like the options in the draft a whole lot more for receiver.
You can get by if you want to sign Greg Ward too for like if worse came to worse.
And again, you don't have a Devontae Smith and a Quez Watkins at safety right now. You don't have those players. And so maybe you bring back Rodney McLeod after this is all said and done and you do focus on the draft. But if they're going to pay another contract, I still hope it is safety. And then, Gino, I'm so tired of this Deshaun Watson back and forth. Nobody clearly knows what the hell
or cares.
I'm so tired of the one report. The Eagles are out. He's done with them. And he's only talking to the Panthers and Saints. And then 5 minutes later, it's another report. No, he's actually meeting with other teams. And John Clark says the Eagles are still monitoring it. I want this to be over. So nobody knows what he wants clearly. So can we just stop reporting things until we know? This is all just crazy speculation at this point. It's just,
and he's a huge domino too, because if he doesn't go to Seattle,
I know I need it to be done.
Is DK available if he doesn't go to Seattle?
Right.
Is Tyler Lockett
available?
One
of the reports was that Watson said Seattle's off his list now. But again, I don't know. I mean, he's still meeting with other teams. So, but that was just driving me nuts today on Twitter. Good Lord.
No, I totally agree. But I think we have seen how free agency is going to play out. Like we saw the guys get re-signed like 30 minutes beforehand. You see guys like Emmanuel Ogbah, they re-signed there. Then teams started saying, okay, who's our priority guys? I think the teams that wanted to get their priority players, you look at Jacksonville, they go out and sign a guy like Brandon Sheriff. They signed their 7 other players that they've signed. I think teams have really found the targets. Now it's, okay, where is the market and how can we take advantage of those guys maybe who haven't signed? Because DJ Chark is still available, Lou. Like Russell Gage, there's guys out there that could fit into this offense at a price that doesn't go to Jacksonville territory and sits in where the Eagles believe they should spend. They never overspend, and I really believe that they underspend because they're right at the cap most of the time, and good teams pay good players and are up against the cap. So sign more Hasson Reddicks, sign more guys that are going to fit Jonathan Gannon's defense. If you could find a wide receiver too, like Juju or DJ or any of those guys at a lower cost, why not? Like, let's use this rookie quarterback contract to our advantage because it seems all signs are showing we're making 3 picks this year. The big money is going to come in 4 years down the road when all these guys need contracts. So right now we have a little bit of a luxury where we could sign Hasson Reddick and maybe sign another premier piece. Marcus Williams, man, he's still out there. Like I still have
there's
hope.
still a chance. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles wherever you get your podcast. We'll have another reaction show tomorrow later on in the day. We're in video form as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also posting our breaking news reactions. So the minute Hasson Reddick re-signed, I posted a video there exclusive to YouTube and Twitter. So also follow us at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase, LOE, and at GC24_football. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Enjoy the Hasson Reddick highlights on YouTube tomorrow. Hopefully there's another guy tomorrow. We're excited to watch his highlights as well. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. The draft after this week is going to be the primary focus for most, and Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL draft to life better than anybody every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase, as always, signing off. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening and watching, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.